Welcome to the Black Cock and Balls opening, otherwise known as the BBC defense. Now, keeping in mind when I was creating this opening, I didn't think I'd have enough squares on the board to cover the length, so today we're going to be compromising with the maximal amount of girth. The thing about the cock and balls is you can pretty much play it in any position, but today we're going to be playing it against the Polish opening and the variation officially known as the Czech defense. Now, fair warning. If you play this opening, you may be approached by strangers in the street asking you to do favors while holding wads of cash. Likely asking you to show off your cock and balls. Most of the times I just politely refuse. Now it starts off with b4, the Polish opening, and we respond with e5, occupying the center, preparing to create our full tip. After bishop to b2, we don't push d5 immediately. We first must play pawn to d6. So after pawn to e2, we now play bishop to e3, and this is still following theory of the Czech defense. After knight to f3, we can play knight to d7, creating somewhat of a flaccid cock. After bishop to e2, preparing to castle as white, we must expand our girth with pawn to f6. So the f and c pawns, these are our girth pawns because they prevent the knights from jumping into the attack and disrupting the formation of our cock and our balls. Keep that in mind for every position that you get for the cock and balls as black and as white. So after castles, we now can play pawn to d5, and our tip is protected by the bishop on e6. At this point, white might think that we're attacking the b4 pawn with our bishop, and they'll choose to defend it with a3, but that is not in our interest. We must first create our shaft before advancing our attack. So bishop to d6, expanding the shaft further, and preparing to complete it with the knight on e7. After something like knight c3, attacking our center once again, we play knight to e7, creating our full cock. All we need are some balls. After pawn to e4, attacking our tip relentlessly, we must defend it with our girth pawn on c6. If you take a look at this girth and take a look at this shaft, I mean, it's pretty impenetrable at this point, but after pawn to d4 now, trying to attack our shaft once again, we simply play h6, preventing knight on g5. After pawn takes e5, we take back with the f-pawn, and now we've disrupted our girth, but we have maintained our cock. After pawn takes d5, c takes d5. Now white's really out of options, so they're going to try and attack our king with pawn to h4. But before we create our balls, we have to play a6. Now this is crucial because it prevents knight to b5. After knight to a4, preventing queen to b6, which is pretty crucial as well later on. We now castle, creating our first ball. Now, white's really going to try and attack the king side. I mean, there is a semi-open f-file. A lot of these pieces are already eyeing up the king, so they're going to play something like pawn to h5 here, but they fail to realize that we have other concerns in the position, and that is rook to c8, creating our full cock and balls. Now, I mean, this is a pretty strong cock, if you ask me. I mean, even the engine agrees it's minus 0.7 for black, which suggests that we are at a slight advantage, and at any point in this game we can extend our tip pretty much indefinitely because there are no opposing pawns stopping it. So that is the advantage of having a black cock. We can also put a queen on one of the girth files pretty easily, and we can support the balls that way. To continue on with the game and show you how to decimate your opponent, after white tries to disrupt the cock with pawn to c4, for example, we play the engine move bishop to b8. Now, the reason why we do this is that the bishop is currently undefended. Now, it does compromise our black square girth, but at this point we are comfortable with disrupting our shaft in order to develop a formidable attack. After pawn takes d5, knight takes d5. Now, the reason why we kept the bishop on b8 was to support the e5 pawn. Now, look at this. It's double defended, and this rook is eyeing up the king side, primarily attacking the knight. And all these pieces are piling up on the tip, but it's fine because we have enough defenders for it. Now white is going to attempt to once again attack on the king side here. This is pretty common, so they play something like g3, which is still an engine move. Now we can put our queen on the f file, i.e. the girth file, and eye up this f2 square and attack the knight with two pieces. After rook to c1, attacking our ball on c8, we take on c1. After queen takes c1, now we can play bishop to g4 and now pin this knight. At this point, I mean, you're out of options. You can't save the knight, so it's best for you to just move it into a compromised square and potentially defend the bishop. And now you don't want to take this way because now bishop takes g4, eyes up the knight, and your attack is pretty much over. So you have to take the bishop on e2, and after knight takes e2, you simply play bishop to a7. Now you're attacking the f2's pawn, and you can't really defend it properly as white. So after something like knight to c5, blocking in the bishop, knight takes c5, and after pawn takes c5, you obviously can't take back because the queen is eyeing up. I saw you playing that automatic move in your head. We won't be doing that. Instead, we'll play queen to f3. Queen to f3, keeping this attack, keeping the pressure here, and now white once again is out of moves. You can't take this pawn here because the knight is hanging, so you're kind of out of moves, and you need to do something about this bishop's x-ray on your king. So let's say in this line you play queen to c4, not over defending the f2 pawn, and once again not trying to hang any pieces, just put pressure on the central knight, and maybe prepare to take here because now this is actually defended. You play the very strong move b5, forcing on passant, and after bishop takes b6, eyeing up the f2 square, there's very little you can do to defend it. After king to h2, getting away from this x-ray, maybe baiting this bishop move after there, because the bishop will be pinned to the queen. So let's say bishop takes here, and now you've got a whole lot of problems with queen takes h5. And now you're probably better off just taking with the bishop on e5 and allowing this queen takes h5 check. You can play king to g2, and this actually results in checkmate in 15. However, just to keep things simple and quick, after queen to h4, blocking the check, simply queen takes e2. There's very little you can do to defend this rook. So after queen to h3 coming into the defense, you simply play knight to e3, and now this rook is completely hanging. However, there is one tricky move, because after queen to e6 check, you want to be very careful, because now it's checkmate in 2 if you play king h8, because the queen h6 check, this is pinned to the king, and no matter what you do, this becomes checkmate. So there is a drawback to the black cock and balls. However, in this position, you wouldn't play king h8. Instead, you play king h7, and after king h7, you don't have the same idea, because all of these checks are covered at the minute. Queen would likely come back to h3. After queen h3, you play knight f1 check, forcing the king to another compromised square. It's best here. So let's say king to f1, and after queen f3 check, you're out of moves, as the bishop, the knight, and the queen cover these squares, so the queen has to block. Now you play queen h5 check, and once again queen has to block, and this is checkmate. So that was the black cock and balls. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it does well in your games. If you know anybody who has played the Polish opening Czech defense and you would like me to review the game or any other form of the black cock and balls, then do drop a comment below. I will be going over more variations of the black cock and balls against different openings during the week, so stay tuned for that. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you found this useful, please like and subscribe, and I will be coming out with more. And if we get enough interest, I will drop a course on the cock and balls that you'll be able to get on Chessable, obviously for free, because we don't want to charge people for this vast amount of knowledge. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed watching and hope you have a great day.